Hey everybody, Jeremy here from Nobot Studios. Welcome to another Grit Fantasy RPG video. Today's topic will be flanking. Now I had thought I had finished with all the Grit Fantasy RPG videos, but apparently not. I don't know if I'll ever be done, actually. But anyway, we're going to be talking about flanking today. I've made other videos about flanking before, but that was included within a broader kind of combat context. So I thought it'd be very important to kind of put together a video specifically for flanking because I think it deserves it. It's a very small little rule in the book. It's only like 2 lines, but it is small but mighty. So let's look at the rule book and kind of read it out. Read out what the rules say. On page 14, you can find it. It's on the very bottom, just under taking the hit. And it reads as follows. When a combatant is engaged in melee combat and cannot react, melee attacks against them from others are easy. Flanking cannot be done with ranged attacks. So there's 3 kind of things to consider here, like 3 main points. Combatants must be engaged in melee combat. Okay, that's one of the first things, right? The melee attacks made against them are easy. That means that they need to beat a 3 for it to be successful. The target of the attacks must be unable to react. That's the second one. If they can react to another attack, the flanking bonus does not apply. Third one is ranged attacks can never be considered flanking attacks. That is thrown or fired weapons of any kind, daggers, darts, grenades, bombs, bows, crossbows, and if you get into Grit Galaxies, pistols, rifles, cannons, blasters, whatever. Any ranged attack cannot be used as a flanking attack or cannot use the flanking bonus. And that's pretty much flanking in a nutshell, right? So I want to go through some brief examples just to kind of like show you how this looks on a map. And it'll be kind of an example that looks like a VTT here. So let me pull this up real quick. And this is a 2-minute tabletop little grid map. And I've got some of the grit tokens here set up. So we've got Brogar, the dwarf, and I'm also going to pull in Krunk, the Rukwar. But for the first example, we're just going to use Brogar, the dwarf, and 2 orcs. So this is kind of like going to be the main way that you know, most of the time you're going to see it kind of play out like this. Okay, so let's just say Brogar kind of walks into this room. And like, actually, he walks through the opening of this room. He sees this orc in front of him, and he just rushes in and attacks him. Okay, now these 2 are considered in melee combat. So Brogar swings his axe at the orc, who like counterattacks with his sword. They make opposed rolls together, against each other. Let's say Brogar comes out ahead by 1 grit and does 1 point of damage to the orc. Orc is still alive. Brogar has used his movement and his action to attack. So his turn is done. That player's turn is done. Now it moves to the GM. The GM he cannot do anything more with the orc that attacked Brogar, but he has another orc here in the corner that saw this all happen. So the orc moves up to Brogar. Okay, and he swings his sword at Brogar. Now Brogar is engaged with that melee combat with this first orc. So this second orc is going to get a flanking bonus because he is adjacent to Brogar. Brogar can't react to it. And his buddy is engaged with Brogar. So let's just say this second orc makes an attack, rolls a 6 against a 3. He does 3 points of damage to Brogar. Okay. Super easy to remember. If there was a third orc in the room, that third orc would also roll against a 3. And so on and so on, like so on and so forth. If there's 5 orcs in this room, like the first one that was engaged with Brogar would, be a normal attack. But anyone else in addition to that would just be rolling a 3 or rolling against a 3 to do damage against Brogar. So you can see how this can get very dangerous very quickly. Of course, a range of monsters can affect this. Like if you have mooks or really weak monsters that are like a -3 for their universal aspect value, they're not going to be doing a lot of damage. But if you have enough of them around you, that can add up really quick, especially if you have multiple rounds of this happening. Okay. So the second kind of version of this can be kind of in reverse. So let's say there's an ogre in this room. Brogar runs in and attacks the ogre. There's only one ogre, of course, and they do an exchange of attacks. Let's say the ogre gets the best of Brogar and does a couple damage to him. Doesn't kill him. They're still engaged in combat. And then his buddy, Crunk, comes into the room and engages with the ogre as well. Since Brogar and the ogre are engaged in combat, Crunk can now attack the ogre with a flanking bonus, right? So it's kind of the reversed here. So you can see that it can be an advantage for characters and for monsters. It works for both. There's no special rule for characters versus monsters. So you can, if you time things right, as far as movement, combat, or movement and your turns and stuff, you can use flanking to your advantage. Just know that if you rush into the fray, you can really get dead pretty quick. One thing of note too is that if you are a character with a lot of armor and a shield, that can make a big difference. Okay. So if you have like medium armor and a shield, that would give you 3 soak. That basically negates the bonus that you get for flanking. So, and that applies to every single attack that is made against you. Also, shields can be used to be sacrificed to negate one attack. So if you have that going on, where you get damaged, like, for 9 points of damage or something, you can sacrifice that shield and just negate that completely. So if you're surrounded, you get a big attack against you, and you have multiple attacks coming, you can at least do that. Okay. Here's another kind of situation, and it relates to features for monsters or movement. Okay, so the Minotaur has an ability called Gorging Horns. So basically what that does is it picks up and flings its opponent a short distance away if it's successful. So let's say these two pair off, and the Minotaur gets the better of Brogar and sends him flying a short distance away. Like that would be, over here somewhere, probably a little further than that, but that's all the room I have on the map. So after their little fight there, Brogar gets thrown and he's prone on the ground a distance away. They are no longer engaged in melee combat, even though they just had melee a melee exchange, right? They're not adjacent to each other. So when Krunk comes running in from outside to attack the Minotaur, he does not get a flanking bonus. Okay. Just because one opponent has engaged doesn't mean that there's a flanking bonus if they're not still adjacent. So adjacency is key. All right. Another thing you could do, or another way that this can be kind of negated, is if let's say the Minotaur runs up, GM takes their turn to attack with the Minotaur, and the player has not done anything with Brogar yet, and there's a melee exchange. Brogar gets, let's just say, gets beaten down really good, 7 points of damage, and he's hurting. He uses his movement at the end of his reaction to move away. Okay, same thing. He's not engaged with that Minotaur anymore, so when Krunk comes running in, there's no flanking bonus. All right. Same thing can happen with a monster. If, let's say Krunk has been fighting with has used his action to attack and the Minotaur attacks back. The Minotaur can also use their movement to move out of the room or not be adjacent anymore, okay, to get away from being flanked. That would force Brogar to engage by himself against the Minotaur if he was going to attack, or throw a dagger or something distance away. That wouldn't give you flanking either. So that's another example of what could happen with this. Features and movement. Another thing is monsters that have multiple actions per round. Okay. The troll has, I think it's a +2, 15-2 or a +3, 15-2. They're pretty nasty. So they have 2 actions per turn. All right. One thing about this is you cannot get the flanking bonus if you have 2 actions per turn. All right. So if it's engaged with Brogar, it has 2 actions per turn. It can have an opposed, melee attack with Brogar back and forth, pulls a roll, and then it has another action to do something. It can attack Brogar again, but it's not going to be flanking because there's not 2 trolls, right? Now, if there was a second troll, that would be bad news, because that would mean, there could potentially be, he could be flanking with 2 actions, right? So if there are 2 trolls, Brogar's in trouble. But that's something the GM has to mitigate, and be aware of. I don't usually team up multiple action monsters in the flanking situation usually, because I know that's pretty dangerous, unless that character is super powerful or has super awesome artifacts and armor and stuff. It's all about gauging it in the moment and seeing kind of what you can push, right? So anyway, another part of this too is if Brogar and the troll engage and they have a melee attack together, right? They are still engaged, and Grunk over here moves up and becomes adjacent to the troll. Now the troll has a reaction left, so he cannot be flanked. So it would be just a normal attack between those two, right? A normal combat situation. So, be an opposed roll. If somehow the troll decided to take the hit from Krunk, then it would be a flanking bonus. Okay, if it just ignored his attack, Krunk could get that flanking bonus. But the troll could also use its action to attack Brogar a second time, right? Or if another thing that can happen here is if the troll attacks Brogar, they have an exchange, and then the troll attacks Brogar again, then he's tapped out, and then Krunk can like come in and do his flanking attack against him because he can't react. Okay. So 2 actions don't necessarily mean flanking. I mean, like a creature with 2 actions really can't flank. It has to be 2 creatures really to flank, or 2 characters. So yeah, those are pretty much the examples I have set up for this. There may be other things that come up, but that's like the basic structure of what you should follow when you're running the game. Of course, if something weird goes down that I haven't covered here, it's always the GM that's going to make that final decision on things and just follow common sense. I do think that the more monsters you have in a scenario, the more difficult things become to keep track of. So be mindful of that. I know it can be something you really want to do to have a giant horde of monsters, and there will be a lot of flanking happening if you have that. But you just got to be mindful that's can become a lot to keep track of, right? And it's about keeping track of actions, really. So, but that's really all I feel like I needed to cover with that. It's a really simple rule, but it's a very important rule that I think, like I said, can get overlooked or forgotten. And please just remember to use the flanking, because it does add an extra level of danger to combat. I put it in there specifically for that, because when you're jumping into the fray, combat, like that can be dangerous, and it should be dangerous. And also it gives characters, some tactical stuff to do, right? Working together always makes things better. So, and I wanted to open up that opportunity to make that happen. So anyway, that's flanking in a nutshell. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them below or post on Discord if you're on there. You're always welcome to join the Grit Discord server, which I have a link below. And this game is for sale on DriveThruRPG as both a PDF and softcover and hardcover. So check it out if you haven't seen it or played it. And thanks for stopping by, and keep rolling those dice.